this half hour, we're talking tall buildings. And I got to tell you that I am a tall building geek. So I was very excited to read in the Huffington Post this past week that there are two really tall buildings that are scheduled to be built here on the West Coast, because we don't really have the tallest buildings here in the West. They're all concentrated in Chicago and New York, you know. But no, San Francisco and Los Angeles are putting in a couple of really large ones, and there's a little bit of debate over which one will actually be taller, and it all has to do with this spire controversy.
Right. Always that add-on on the top.
Right. Is it the top habitable floor, you know, or is it the actual structure sort of thing? Do antennas count? Anyway, to sort it all out for us is Dr. Antony Wood. He's the executive director of the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat, which appropriately is located in Chicago, the home of the tallest building in the U.S. until the One World Trade Center is complete, I believe. Dr. Wood, welcome to the program.
Hello, good morning. Nice to be with you.
Yes, likewise. What is the tallest structure in the U.S. right now?
The tallest building in the U.S. is Sears Tower. The World Trade Center in New York, World Trade Center 1, is technically taller, but the building is still under construction, and therefore we don't class it as a building until it's complete and occupied.
Aha. And when it is finished, when they finally do the last touch on it, then that one will overtake the Willis Tower or the Sears Tower as we most of us know it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'll be the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the controversy of, because I know for a long time I still felt like the Sears Tower was the tallest building in the world, because all these other towers that were popping up didn't have floors that you could go to and be on that were taller than the top floor of the Willis Tower. They were only taller because they had these giant structures on top called spires, but technically that counts.
Yes, technically that counts. I mean, it is a controversial issue, and what you're perhaps referring to something that was very emotive here in Chicago in the kind of mid to late 90s, which was when Sears lost out its title of the world's tallest to Petronas Towers. And people would typically, look at Sears in section or in profile next to Petronas, and the tip of the spire of Petronas would be higher than the roof of Sears, but it wouldn't be higher than the antennae. And you're quite right that there were people working in a permanent capacity, in a continual capacity, at a much higher level than those that were working in the Petronas Towers. So that became very emotive. However, I think the thing you need to think about is, what are we measuring here? What are we measuring? And what the council determined at that time, almost 20 years ago now, was that we're measuring man's ability to put materials above the plane of the earth. I.e., it's the height of the building, not necessarily people that are inside there. However, what became very emotive was that we count spires, but we do not count antennae. And for your listeners, probably the best thing to think about, if you compare the Chrysler building and think about the spire on the top of Chrysler, which is meant to be an extension of the architecture of the building, never to be added to, never to be taken away, as opposed to the antennae on top of Sears, which were not there when the building was first completed.
Oh, and they could be taken away and that sort of thing, so they're really not part of the structure. Well, we're going to pick this up right after the commercial break and talk about the two new buildings slated for California, one in San Francisco, one in Los Angeles. Which city will hold title to the tallest building west of the Mississippi? That coming up in just a moment with Dr. Antony Wood, Executive Director of the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat. This is Eat, Drink, Explore. We're back in a moment. Welcome back to the program, everyone. 9:19 now the time on this Sunday morning. Really nice start to the day here in California. I'm your host, Randall White. You are listening to the Eat, Drink, Explore Radio Network. I'm joined by Patty Pyburn.
Good morning.
And we are speaking with Dr. Antony Wood. He's the Executive Director of the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat in Chicago, which has no shortage of tall buildings. That is for sure. The history of the skyscraper in that city is really amazing. The West Coast has always been a little bit lackluster when it's come to tall buildings, maybe for a good reason.
Maybe we just have more space. We don't need to build up as much.
That's part of it. I think the earthquake factor probably came into play.
We can't forget that.
Right, early on. But the buildings, when you think about the Pacific Rim, where some of the tallest buildings in the world are now located, they're right along all of those earthquake faults. And so the technology, I believe, has gotten to a point where we can build much taller buildings in earthquake-prone regions, and that's what we have on tap in California. In San Francisco and Los Angeles, there are a building for each city that is slated to be built in the near future. In San Francisco, it is the Transbay Terminal. This will be the hub for the bullet train, the high-speed rail to go from San Francisco to Los Angeles. It's also where all of the transit will come in for Alameda's transit system. Can't think of the name of that right now, but and all those sorts of things. The old Transbay Terminal was really run down and ready to go. So they've gotten rid of that, and now they're planning this Transbay.
They're going to replace it in a big way.
Ooh, in a really big way. It's a pretty amazing structure, and I think, just like when they wanted to build the Transamerica Tower, there was a lot of controversy. What's this going to do to the skyline? Well, it ended up making it a very iconic skyline. There is some of that controversy as well going on with this Transbay Terminal. But it will be, for a short time, the tallest building on the West Coast until the Wilshire Grand Tower in Los Angeles is complete. And so there is some of that controversy regarding the whole top of the building and the spire and that sort of thing. And that is why we have Dr. Wood on the line to help sort of fetter out these two competing towers and which one will be the tallest. Welcome back to the program, Doctor.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm still here.
Yes. So these two buildings, do I have that right that in California, the main reason maybe we don't have such tall structures is because of the whole earthquake situation?
I don't think so, to be honest. I think that is a factor, but the reality is that seismic engineering, I don't think that's a barrier. Actually, seismic engineering is probably at its most advanced on the west coast of America than it is in any part of the world. I think it's other factors, not least that the whole of America started from east to west, as I understand it, and certainly the tall buildings did. They were more Chicago, New York. Plus, I think the point about density and space. People in Los Angeles might not like to hear this, but Los Angeles is the poster child for dispersed suburban living, really, as opposed to density, which is one of the factors that's driving tall buildings around the world today. And
that's one of the topics that you study and teach there, right, is urban habitat, and right now Los Angeles is a bad example, right?
Well, I think Los Angeles is its own example. As I said to many people, it's a poster child of that kind of 1950s, 1960s liberation of the individual in the city due to the automobile. And I think, hindsight is a wonderful thing, and nowadays we kind of look at that and the connotations of the energy that it requires to create and operate that city means that it's an unsustainable proposition for other cities. We need to be talking about density and concentrated living, concentrated infrastructure. But I as I said, hindsight is a wonderful thing. I don't think LA is a great model for urban development into the future, especially in countries in Asia that are, huge population growth. But it is what it is.
So, talking about countries in Asia, the big, tall buildings in the world are not in the United States, and it seems like we're seeing more of them built more quickly now. What's the tallest building in the world at this point? Is it in Dubai?
The tallest building complete is the Burj Khalifa, which is in Dubai. It's 828 meters tall, which is about 2,600 feet. That's the tallest. The tallest that is under construction now is also in the Middle East. It is in Saudi Arabia. It's called the Kingdom Tower, and that will be over 1,000 meters high. So if you like 3,600, I think, feet. Interestingly, both designed by Chicago architects.
Oh, is that right?
That is interesting.
That's interesting. Is the one in Saudi Arabia... I was looking online and I saw one that was more than 200 floors. I always think of things in floors. I know that a floor can vary, I guess, in how tall it is. But I saw one that was more than 200 floors. Is that the Saudi Arabia one?
Well, that's a very controversial question because, that goes back to what we were saying before about spires and something that, I mean, actually, we now talk about it, we use an expression, vanity height, because the reality is that the Burj Khalifa, probably a fifth of the top of that tower is an uninhabitable spire, although it is an extension of the architecture of the building. And in the Kingdom Tower, an even greater percentage of that will be an uninhabitable spire. So, again, it goes back to this vanity height, but what is it that you're measuring? Are you measuring man's ability to put materials above the sky, above the plane of the earth, or are you measuring man's ability to put man above the plane of the earth? And that's at the crux of the conversation, really.
So, in terms of floors, the San Francisco Tower will just be in the 60s, I believe. The Los Angeles Wilshire Tower will be a lot. Will have several more floors.
Yeah, I think latest information is that the Wilshire Grand is going to have about 73 floors. Transbay 61 floors. Sorry, I didn't quite answer the point. So the Kingdom Tower at 1,000 meters, for sure, that could contain well over 200 floors. Whether it will or not is another question. It's the question of how many potential floors the spire occupies.
Right.
So floors are definitely not a good indicator of the height of buildings. Another reason is because in a residential building, if you think about the ceiling, it's a lot lower than in an office building. So
right.
the equivalent height in a residential, you'd get a lot more floors than you would in an office building.
I'll tell you that building in Dubai was in that Tom Cruise movie, and he's hanging on the outside of it. And I know he wasn't in real life, but
and you were hanging on the edge of your seat.
I was. My hands were sweating. I almost couldn't watch it because it had me so just beside myself. That made a great location for that movie.
It was fantastic. Where they took the glass out and then he kind of used these suction cups to walk up. Actually, I was quite surprised they let them do that. They're pretty protective of that building, actually.
Right. Is there a trend away from observation towers at the tops of buildings?
No, I don't think there is a trend away from that at all. Actually, I would say there's probably a trend towards that.
Oh,
but of
good.
course, you reach saturation point. I mean, there's only so many places in the city that people will pay to go up and observe. So no, I don't think there's a trend away from that at all.
I think the best deal in Chicago there is the free ride up to the signature room at the top of the John Hancock, and then the drinks are expensive, but when you factor in how much it would cost you to go to the top of the Willis Tower, I'd rather sit there and enjoy a cocktail looking out at the view,
and get the free ride.
And get the free ride, right?
Actually, I'll give you another tip there. The view from the toilets are just as good, and you don't even have to buy a cocktail to go to the toilet.
I like that. That is a good one.
That was a good tip.
Well, we're going to have to follow these buildings that are going up here in California with a little, we'll just keep an eye on them and see what's happening with those. Dr. Antony Wood, Executive Director of the Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat, thank you for joining us this morning.
No, it's been my pleasure. Nice talking to you.